were torn down from every corner of the city. His name was wiped from monuments, his memory condemned. It was as if Commodus had never existed, as if all the echoes of his reign could be erased with a chisel and a decree. But the wounds he left on Rome ran deeper than marble. Years of excess, paranoia, and bloodshed had frayed the very fabric of the empire. The people who had once cheered for their Gladiator-Emperor now watched in uneasy silence as the city descended into uncertainty. The Senate scrambled to restore order, but nobody knew who would take the throne. Factions formed overnight. The Praetorian Guard, who had once protected the emperor, now auctioned off the imperial seat to the highest bidder. The once mighty capital of the world reeled from shock, confusion, and fear. The gods themselves, it seemed, had turned their faces away. Rome had lost not just an emperor, but its sense of itself. The days and nights following Commodus's death were filled with rumor and unrest. In the dark corners of the city, whispers spread of poison, of murder, of betrayal at the highest levels. Some said the gods had taken vengeance on a false king. Others said it was a necessary act, the only way to save Rome from destruction. But whatever their beliefs, all Romans knew one thing: the age of certainty was over. In the chaos, new men rose to power. Some were would-be reformers, others ruthless opportunists. Civil war simmered beneath the surface. In the space of a single year, the empire saw multiple emperors, each meeting a grisly fate. The year of the 5 emperors, they would call it, a testament to just how much Commodus's reign had destabilized the world's greatest empire. Yet even as order was eventually restored, Commodus's ghost haunted Rome. He became a cautionary tale, a warning about the dangers of unchecked power, of ego left to run wild. For centuries to come, Roman historians would write about him with scorn and horror. He was the emperor who fancied himself a god, but died the most human death imaginable.
But why did Commodus fall so far? How did the son of a philosopher king transform into a tyrant so reviled? To understand that, you need to go back to his beginnings, to the years before the blood and the spectacle, before the poison and the betrayal.
Commodus grew up in the shadow of greatness. His father, Marcus Aurelius, was the very model of a Roman emperor, wise, just, devoted to the ideals of Stoicism. He believed that a ruler was a servant of the people, not the other way around. He wrote meditations on duty, virtue, and the fleeting nature of power. He led legions in battle, but always yearned for peace. From a young age, Commodus was marked out as his heir. He was given the best education money could buy. Tutors taught him Greek and Latin, philosophy and rhetoric, military tactics, and the art of governance. But even then, there were troubling signs. Unlike his father, Commodus had little interest in philosophy or statecraft. He preferred games and pageantry, spectacle over substance. He was easily bored, quick to anger, and deeply susceptible to flattery. Marcus Aurelius saw the dangers, but what could he do? In the Roman world, the principle of dynastic succession was gaining ground. The emperor's son was expected to inherit the throne. And so, perhaps against his better judgment, Marcus Aurelius named Commodus as his co-emperor, and later, sole heir. When Marcus died, the weight of the empire fell on Commodus's young shoulders. At first, there was hope. Rome was entering a new age of stability, with a smooth transition from father to son. But Commodus was no Marcus. He shunned the hard work of governance, delegating authority to a series of favorites and sycophants. The real power behind the throne shifted from one courtier to another, each more corrupt than the last. But what Commodus lacked in administrative skill, he made up for in ambition. At least, the ambition to be adored. He craved attention and adulation. He wanted to be more than just an emperor. He wanted to be a legend. That was when his obsession with the gladiatorial games began. In the Roman imagination, the arena was a place of death and glory. Gladiators were both slaves and superstars, risking their lives for the entertainment of the masses. Commodus saw in them a reflection of his own fantasies. He began to train as a gladiator, donning armor and wielding weapons in mock battles staged for the public. At first, people were amused, but as the emperor's appearances grew more frequent and more violent, amusement turned to unease. Commodus's games were never fair. His opponents were hand-picked to lose, often disabled or armed with wooden swords. Wild animals were brought into the arena after being starved or drugged. The emperor would slay them in front of cheering crowds, basking in the applause. He saw himself as Hercules reborn, a demigod among mortals. But the costs were immense. Each spectacle drained the imperial treasury. The city's resources were diverted to feed Commodus's ego. Taxes rose, public works languished, and corruption flourished. The senators grumbled, the people suffered, but few dared to speak out. For Commodus, Rome itself was just a stage for his performance. As the years passed, Commodus's paranoia deepened. He trusted no one, not even his own family. He executed his sister Lucilla for plotting against him, along with countless senators and officials. The palace became a place of fear, where suspicion could mean a death sentence. Commodus retreated further into his fantasies, surrounding himself with flatterers who fed his delusions of godhood. He began renaming months of the year after himself, changing the titles of public offices to reflect his supposed divinity. Statues of himself as Hercules appeared across the city. He demanded to be worshipped as a living god, an act that horrified even the most sycophantic members of the court. But absolute power breeds enemies. The more Commodus isolated himself, the more those around him plotted to save themselves and Rome from his madness. In the final months of his reign, 3 of his closest confidants, his mistress Marcia, his chamberlain Eclectus, and the praetorian prefect Laetus, came together in secret. They weighed their options, knowing that failure would mean certain death. The plot was simple. Marcia, trusted by Commodus, would poison his wine. If that failed, they had a backup plan. A young wrestler named Narcissus, favored by the emperor, would finish the job. On the night of December 31st, while the city celebrated the new year, they put their plan into action. Marcia slipped the poison into Commodus's drink. At first, it seemed to work. The emperor became violently ill, but his constitution was strong, and he began to recover. Panicking, the conspirators summoned Narcissus. He entered the emperor's private bath, where Commodus lay weakened and disoriented. With cold efficiency, Narcissus strangled the emperor, ending his reign in a moment of brutal intimacy. The next morning, the news spread like wildfire. Rome was leaderless. The Senate moved quickly to erase Commodus's memory, declaring him a public enemy, ordering his statues destroyed. The city braced itself for more chaos. For Rome, Commodus's death marked not just the end of a reign, but the end of an era. The stability of the Antonine dynasty was shattered. In the years that followed, the empire would be rocked by civil wars, assassinations, and invasions. Some historians see Commodus's murder as the beginning of Rome's long decline, a moment when the ideals of service and duty were replaced by the naked pursuit of power. But the story of Commodus is more than just a tale of one man's madness. It's a lesson about the dangers of unchecked authority, about what happens when a leader confuses personal glory with public good. It's about the fragility of even the mightiest empires, and the way ambition can consume not just the man, but the world around him. Centuries later, the memory of Commodus would linger in the Roman psyche. He became a symbol of everything an emperor should not be: vain, cruel, capricious, and self-obsessed. His life was retold in cautionary tales, his death a warning to those who would follow. Yet paradoxically, Commodus also lived on in the imagination of the people he once ruled. His exploits in the arena became the stuff of legend. Writers and artists revisited his story again and again, fascinated by the spectacle of a god-emperor brought low by his own flaws. Even today, his name endures, a reminder that power, unchecked and absolute, is as dangerous as it is seductive.
So the next time you see the crumbling statue of a Roman emperor, remember Commodus. Remember the boy who inherited an empire, who dreamed of being a god, and who died as a man, betrayed by those he trusted most. His story is a mirror,
reflecting the best and worst of what it means to rule, to be ruled, and to be human. And in the silence that follows, ask yourself, what would you have done standing in the shadow of a tyrant? Would you have cheered for the spectacle, or would you have dared to whisper the truth? History, after all, is written not just by the victors, but by those brave enough to remember.